What's going on, baseball fans? How are we doing? So we've been in the second half of the season for a few weeks now, so that made me want to put together a list of my top 10 teams in the second half of the season. However, I'm going to put a little bit of a twist on this. I'm not just going to factor in the regular season, I'm going to factor in the playoffs as well of where these teams fall on this list. So let's go talk about it. Starting off my list at number 10, I have the 2011 Tampa Bay Rays. This one's going to be a little tough for me to talk about as my Red Sox suffered a huge choke job down the stretch here, but a lot of people don't really seem to remember just how good the Tampa Bay Rays were down the stretch. If we take a look at their second half wins and losses, they were 42-30 down the stretch. You know, a .583 win percentage, nothing crazy by any means, but the Tampa Bay Rays, they played their best baseball when it counted, and they took advantage of a choke job from supposedly the greatest team ever with the Boston Red Sox. So if we go take a look at September at this point, so going into September, Tampa Bay was 9 games back of the Red Sox. And like I just said, the Red Sox had a huge choke job in September. But Tampa Bay, they played their best baseball when it counted. In August, they went 18-10, a .643 win percentage. And in September, they were 17-10. So they just played solid baseball down the stretch. They had a few key guys. Evan Longoria was huge for the Rays down the stretch. He had a 4.1 wins above replacement, a .382 on base. He had 20 homers, 57 RBIs. Ben Zobrist, Desmond Jennings were really good. Even Melvin Upton Jr., Sean Rodriguez contributed as well. And on the pitching side, you had guys like David Price, James Shields, Jeff Neiman, Wade Davis, Hellickson. And then if we go take a look at the bullpen, you had guys like Joel Peralta, Gomes, Kyle Farnsworth, who were really solid out of that bullpen. So the Tampa Bay Rays in 2011, to me, they start off my list just because they played just really solid baseball, taking advantage of the Red Sox in that September. Up next, I have the 2006 Minnesota Twins. This is one of those teams that I think really had the potential to make it a long way that year. Unfortunately, getting ousted in the first round, but they had an incredible second half. If we go take a look, they were 49-27 in the second half, a .645 win percentage. But most of all, if we take a look at the standings, they were 11 games back to start the second half, 47-39, way behind the Detroit Tigers in the standings, but they ended up winning the division that year, 96-66 on the season, an incredible second half to win them the division. If we take a look at some of these guys, Jason Bartlett, Joe Mauer, Justin Morneau really led the way. Justin Morneau won the MVP that year. Joe Mauer won the batting crown that year, but probably the biggest reason of all, Johan Santana went 10-1 down the stretch, a 2.54 ERA, a 3.03 FIP, winning the Cy Young Award. I mean, Johan Santana was absolutely incredible in 2006. This Minnesota Twins team, I really thought had the potential to win a World Series that year. Unfortunately, fell short to the A's in the division round, but the 2006 Minnesota Twins easily make my list. At number 8, I have the 2012 Oakland A's, and spoiler alert, this is not going to be the first time the A's make this list, but this team in 2012 had a heck of a second half. If we go take a look, they were 43-43, a .500 team at the end of the first half, but in the second half, they turned on the Jets. They went 51-25 the rest of the way. At the end of the first half of the season, they were, like I said, 43-43. They were 9 games back behind the Rangers in the division, and then ended up winning the division 1 game ahead of the Rangers. This was thanks in large part to a few guys. Yoenis Cespedes was fantastic that year. Coco Crisp, Josh Donaldson, Brandon Moss, Johnny Gomes, Chris Carter. They had a lot of guys on the offense contributing that year. And then with the pitching, they had some guys really stepping up. Jared Parker, Malone, Bartolo Colon right there. And if we take a look at the bullpen as well, you know, guys like Sean Doolittle, Ryan Cook, Jerry Blevins really stepped up for them. The Oakland A's down the stretch were absolutely incredible. One more time, taking a look at how they did. They had a .671 win percentage. Unfortunately, you know, for the Oakland A's, losing a 5-game series to the Tigers in the division round, this team just, I mean, it's just incredible what they did in the second half. Up next, we have the 2017 Cleveland Indians, and there is one reason and one reason only that they make this list. This team set the record for the American League's longest winning streak of 22 games in a row. Incredible, absolutely incredible. This team was so fun to watch in 2017. They were just going nuts. I mean, look at the win percentage they had in the second half, a 733 win percentage, 55-20 overall. If we take a look at where they were in the standings, I mean, they were, still fine in that first half of the season, 47-40. Didn't really turn it on until the second half, but they were still in first place at this point in time, 2.5 ahead of Minnesota, 3 ahead of the Kansas City Royals. But if we take a look at where they finished, they finished in first, but look at all the other teams behind them. 17 back for the Twins, 22 back for the Royals, and to think just how close they were at the end of the first half of the season, that's just absolutely nuts. The Indians had a lot of really good talent on this team. Francisco Lindor, Jose Ramirez, Carlos Santana, Roberto Perez, Edwin Encarnacion, the list goes on and on. If we take a look, Corey Kluber winning the Cy Young that year. He was incredible down the stretch. 11-1 over 15 starts, a 1.79 ERA, a 2.55 FIP, 11.5 strikeouts per 9. Unfortunately for the Indians, they weren't able to get the job done against the Yankees. What is up with this Yankees team, beating these teams in the playoffs, who had these really long win streaks, like the 2002 Oakland A's, the 2017 Indians? What is up with the Yankees? But anyway, for the Indians, absolutely incredible team. Unfortunately, couldn't really go the distance in the playoffs, but to me, they absolutely make this list. At number 6, I have the 2014 Kansas City Royals, and this is the first team on this list to be able to make it to a World Series. The 2014 Kansas City Royals, to me, were very refreshing. This is a team that just stunk for years, and they finally put it together. Well, they actually didn't put it together until the second half. At the end of the first half, they were 48-46. In the standings, they were 6.5 back behind the Tigers, but by the end of the season, they were able to finish second in the division, and they got a wild card spot, beating the Oakland A's in the wild card game. They eventually made it all the way to the World Series, losing to the Giants in a heartbreaking World Series, a 7-game series, a classic. Madison Bumgarner pretty much just killed any hopes of the Kansas City Royals, but Kansas City this year, they were very good. Again, if we take a look at how they did in the second half, 41-27 over the second half, a 603 win percentage. That's very good. The Kansas City Royals had a lot of guys step up for them that year. It was really a team effort. I mean, Alex Gordon, Lorenzo Cain, Aoki, Escobar, Dyson. I mean, they had these guys really stepping up. The starting pitching was really good. If we take a look at that, James Shields was on the Kansas City Royals that year. You had Guthrie, Vargas, Ventura, Duffy, all these guys really contributing. And if we take a look at the bullpen, I mean, you had guys like Wade Davis and Greg Holland just absolutely masterful in that bullpen. And then you had Kelvin Herrera too, Jason Frazier. This Kansas City Royals team, they get the number 6 spot on this list because, hey, they made it to a World Series. Unfortunately, couldn't get the job done, but they were able to get the job done the very next year. So that's who I have at number 6. Coming in at number 5, I have the 2001 Oakland A's. I know, they're ahead of the Kansas City Royals on this list, and the Royals got to a World Series, but Oakland in 2001 in the second half was absolutely incredible. Take a look at the second half. They had 58-17. That's almost an 800 win percentage. That is absolutely nutty. They were a 500 team at the end of the first half, basically 44-43 in the standings. I mean, don't forget, this was also the year of that incredible Seattle Mariners team. So they were nowhere in reach of that division, but they definitely were in reach of a wild card. You had teams like Boston and Cleveland ahead in the wild card by like a good 5-6 games. So Oakland, like you just saw, really turned on the Jets in the second half of the season. This Oakland team was very good. I know everyone probably thinks of that the Moneyball movie, where, the 2001 Oakland A's, they lost guys like, Damon, Isringhausen, Giambi. I mean, those guys were huge players for that team. If we take a look at the Oakland A's that year, Jason Giambi, I mean, he was absolutely insane that year. A 342 average, a 477 on base, 120 RBIs, 38 home runs. Eric Chavez, Miguel Tejada. I mean, you had Johnny Damon, you had Jermaine Dye. I mean, just an incredible offense with that team that year. But the pitching, Mark Mulder, Tim Hudson, Barry Zito. I mean, these guys were insane. 17-8 for Barry Zito, and he was the worst one out of the 3. I mean, are you kidding me? Mark Mulder was insane. Tim Hudson was insane. The bullpen, like I said, Jason Isringhausen, he was really good. But you had some other guys in there too, like Jim Mercer, Jeff Tam. guys like Chad Bradford. This Oakland A's team, just a juggernaut of a team in the second half, ended up winning the wild card that year. If we take a look, they finished with a record of 102-60, losing to the Yankees in the first round. But Oakland, this is easily one of the best. The 2001 Oakland A's, easily one of the best second half teams of all time. And since we're talking about the Oakland A's, let's stick with them at number 4, the 2002 Oakland A's, the very next season. I'm putting this team ahead of the 2001 team because this team was not as talented as that 2001 team, and this team put together an American League record 20 straight wins. This was a record at the time. It was eventually broken by the Cleveland Indians in 2017, but this team was incredible. They actually did finish with a pretty decent record in the first half, 50-38, a .568 win percentage, but they turned on the Jets in the second half, 53-21, a .716 win percentage. Like I said, they won 20 straight games at one point. And you have to remember, this team, they did have some talent. The Moneyball movie, it will depict this team as having like no talent, but they still had some good players. You had Miguel Tejada, Eric Chavez on this team still. You had guys like Jermaine Dye, but like the movie showed us, Scott Hatteberg, he was a key contributor with that team. Ray Durham, Mark Ellis. They still had the pitching too. Tim Hudson, Barry Zito. They also had Corey Lato that year, Mark Mulder. The bullpen, Jason Isringhausen ended up leaving the team in the offseason prior, but they got in the movie, remember Ricardo Rincon? Ricardo Rincon was good. Chad Bradford, Billy Koch was good. So this Oakland A's team, it just the fact that they lost so much talent, but they were able to be even better than the team, the year prior, winning 20 straight games. Oakland at this time, they were 5 games back, or at the end of the first half, they were 5 games back behind Anaheim and Seattle at the time. But by the end of the season, ended up winning the division, had a better record than the team the year before, who had more talent on that team, 103-59. This Oakland A's team definitely is one of the more historic teams. Unfortunately, losing a 5-game series to the Twins in the division round. But either way, the Moneyball A's of 2002 make my list at number 4. Moving into the top 3, at number 3, I have the 2007 Colorado Rockies. What a fun team this was. This team was electric down the stretch, but let's take a look at how they were in the first half. They were a 500 team in the first half, 44-44, but in the second half, they completely exploded. They won 21 out of their last 22 games to make the playoffs. Ended up getting to a 1-game playoff with the Padres, which they won in a 13-inning classic. Absolutely insane second half for the Rockies, and they carried that momentum all the way to the World Series. They swept the division round. They swept the championship round. I mean, this team was just on fire. It was crazy. Again, 44-44 at the end of the first half. If we take a look at where they were in the division, that West was actually pretty tight. That for all 4 teams that year, the Rockies 44-44. They were 5.5 back. And if we take a look at how they finished 90-73, just a half game behind the Diamondbacks, but getting to the 1-game playoff for the wild card with the Padres, a classic game. For the Rockies that year, the offense was huge. You had Matt Holliday, Troy Tulowitzki, Garrett Atkins, Todd Helton, Rockies legend, guys even like Kaz Matsui. Remember Kaz Matsui? The starting pitching wasn't anything phenomenal down the stretch, but they made their starts. They just did what they had to do. Jeff Francis, Ubaldo Jimenez, even like guys like Aaron Cook, Franklin Morales. But the bullpen was very good for the Rockies as well. Brian Fuentes, Manny Corpus, Matt Hergus, Taylor Buckles as well. So everyone really stepped up for this team down the stretch. Unfortunately, fortunately, losing to my Red Sox in the 2007 World Series. But we can't deny how electric this team was down the stretch. Just missing out on winning a World Series that year, but I mean, crazy second half for the Rockies in 2007. Coming in at number 2, I have the 2011 St. Louis Cardinals. Once again, we're talking about a team from 2011. We talked about the Rays earlier, but this time we're going to talk about the Cardinals. The St. Louis Cardinals this year had a huge September, really taking advantage of an Atlanta Braves choke job down the stretch. In September, they finished 18-8, and this was after stumbling for a few months. They lost Pujols to a broken hand, and they just were not very good. They started off pretty well, 16-10 in April, 17-12 in May, but again, those 3 months just couldn't get it together. But September, they really turned it on. And if we take a look at how they, let's see where they were real quick. They were tied for the Central Division at the end of the first half, but again, stumbled over those next few months. And then in the end, with that really good September, they finished 90-72 for the wild card, and then they made a run all the way to the World Series, and then had a classic World Series with the Texas Rangers. David Freese having that memorable Game 6 home run. The St. Louis Cardinals this year, they turned it on when it mattered most, and they had a lot of guys step up for them this year. Yadier Molina was huge in the second half. Hit 337 down the stretch, 9 homers, 34 RBIs. But then don't forget, like I said, Pujols, he broke his hand, but he came back sooner than a lot of people thought he would. He was huge. 19 home runs, 49 RBIs at 319 with a 375 on base down the stretch. Pujols was huge. Berkman was huge. Matt Holliday, David Freese, like I mentioned, but he was also really solid down the stretch. Didn't just have the walk-off home run. He was a key contributor down the stretch. And then for the Cardinals, Chris Carpenter, I think a lot of people don't really seem to remember Chris Carpenter in this season. He was huge in the playoffs for them. 7-2, 15 games started, 2.98 ERA, a 2.74 FIP. Jamie Garcia, Kyle Loesch, Jake Westbrook, Edwin Jackson, all contributing for the starting rotation. And the bullpen, remember Jason Mott, Octavio Dotel. I mean, good grief. The St. Louis Cardinals, again, they really stumbled there for a few months, but they got it together when it mattered, and they won a World Series. So the 2011 St. Louis Cardinals come in at number 2 on this list. And coming in at number 1 on my list, I have the 2003 Florida Marlins. 2003 had some rough times for certain fans, like me, a Red Sox fan, losing Game 7 in the ALCS to the Yankees. And then you had Cubs fans with the whole Bartman thing. I mean, miserable time for certain fans out there. But for the Florida Marlins, I mean, they had the complete opposite. They turned around their season in the best way possible. They were 49-46 at the end of the first half, ended up going 42-25 down the stretch to win the wild card. If we take a look at where they were in the standings, they were 13 back in the East Division at one point. I mean, this Marlins team at one point, they started 19-29. That's how rough this team was. I mean, they were in a much better place at the end of the first half. Again, 19-29 at one point. Just think about that. And this team ended up winning a World Series. If we take a look at how they finished 91-71 on the year. The Marlins that year, they played the San Francisco Giants in the division round, won that series 3-1. And then, like I just mentioned with the Cubs, they were the team that put the Cubs through the misery in the championship round of the National League, and then went on to beat the New York Yankees. Quite a juggernaut of a team that year, might I add. They beat them in 6 games, led by Josh Beckett. Josh Beckett was huge down the stretch. 13 games, a 2.55 ERA, a 2.71 FIP, just under 10 strikeouts per 9. You also had some other guys like Mark Redmond, Carl Bavano, Brad Penny, and don't forget Dontrelle Willis too. Dontrelle Willis wasn't as sharp down the stretch for the Marlins, but he did come up big when it mattered most in the playoffs. And the offense that year, you had guys contributing all over the place. Luis Castillo, Juan Pierre, Derek Lee, Ivan Rodriguez, Pudge, a young Miguel Cabrera, Mike Lowell, Alex Gonzalez. This Florida Marlins team was so fun. What a turnaround. Again, started 19-29 on the year, and then figured it out, turned it around, ended up winning a World Series. So the 2003 Florida Marlins are my number 1 second half team. So tell me what you think of my list down below in the comments. Did I leave any teams out? Let me know. But that's all I have for right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.